start the recording. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is the second meeting of the Lynn Tree Committee. I'm really excited to get to chat with y'all more. The first meeting we had last month was an info session just about why we might start a tree committee. We're going to do some more of that today. I'm going to just get right into it and share my slides and let you all know what we are here for. So this is the Lynn Tree Committee. We are an urban forestry advisory group for the city of Lynn. If someone could unmute and just let me know if they can see my slides. I can't see everybody at this point.
Yes, we can see them.
Yeah, seeing fine.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So we have a packed meeting. I'm going to be rushing through some slides. It is October, so it's tree planting season. There's some urban foresters on the call who may have planted 1 or 2 trees this very day. But I'm excited to just talk a little bit about the introduction and background for what the tree committee is. I'm going to try this new thing about the importance of trees and show some different information every month about why we are doing any of this. And then I have a bunch of updates on the urban forestry program here in Lynn, including some successes, some things we're really proud of, and some spooky and scary scenes we've seen around town. And then I'll talk really excited about our fall planting season as of this afternoon, and then we'll have plenty of time for public discussion. So let's get right into the intro and background and the importance of trees so that we can stick to these timings. Oh, and I've even forgotten, 5 minutes ago, I was able to add a couple community updates. Feel free, if you're on this call or if you are in the future, to send along flyers for your events that might be tree related. I'm willing to share those here. So these were sent in by the Latino Support Network. They're having an event on October 22nd. It's a community meeting about a development. They are also working with the Emerald Cities and some other partners to have an event about energy cost reduction on October 29th at Lynn Community Television. And then I wanted to just put in a little picture that I could find and thank Ward Councillor Obed Matul and the Floating Bridge Pond Association, newly formed. They did a great job, asking about what species should be removed from around the floating bridge pond, and they did a really fantastic cleanup that made the news with some volunteer efforts from some landscape and tree services as well. I was super happy to see the outcomes and the community get together to do some of this work that really is urban forestry as well. So there's some community updates for y'all. So for anyone who might not have attended a previous meeting or who might not know, in Massachusetts, there are tree committees often in municipalities, and it's usually a local group that works together with public officials to improve the health of all of the trees in that municipality. So they can do everything ranging from advocacy to actual tree planting, but not every municipality even has one of these, and they are each set up differently in their different communities. So the Lynn Tree Committee, I would say, is in very early stages, second meeting. We don't have seats on our committee, and that's something that we kind of are being intentional about. We really want to make sure that we're inviting more residents and more people with different lived experiences and different identities to the table before we get too formal with it. So we are just a public group right now, and we are an advisory group welcoming anyone to come and discuss and advise on urban forestry in the city of Lynn. That link just goes to our website so people can learn more. And this will be really helpful as we create our first urban forest plan. So we're going to be endeavoring to create an urban forest plan that will cover many years into the future for Lynn's urban forest. And I'll keep this timeline updated of exactly kind of where we're at and how the process unfolds as we go here. So we're in October, amazingly, of 2024. We're having our second meeting. We had discussed in our last meeting some tremendous responses to an interest form about what should this tree committee be like. And we have got some exciting updates for you. There's a little precursor in the October section here. Right now, these meetings are scheduled on third Thursdays of the month at 6. That seems to be a time that doesn't work for everyone. So if you have a time that you'd recommend, please send that to my email directly and we can reschedule it. There's not really a great way to get a whole group of people together all available at the same time. So we'll do our best to be accommodating, and feel free to send things in writing or give me a call if you feel like you are not able to participate in this process as much as you'd like. This is a slide I showed last time. It's a bunch of things people said in the interest form about excitement for the tree committee. So I just don't want us to forget where we're coming from. A lot of residents and constituents in Lynn and arborists and other folks really, really want to see there be more advocacy, education, analysis of data, and importance of trees discussed in Lynn. So that's another reason why we're here. Started to put together a little bit of a mission for the tree committee, and I'm going to just keep moving along here. But ultimately, we are all here to discuss preservation, protection, and promotion of the city of Lynn's urban forest. I could really use your advice and your thoughts as we go through some of this work. And I really want to hear from everyone, not just one perspective on any given issue, but folks from a variety of wards, from a variety of races, from a variety of cultural identities, and backgrounds. We want to hear from everyone, not just the same 2 or 3 people as we go through with this process, although you will be hearing a lot from me. So our structure is, as I kind of talked about, anything that needs direct DPW assistance will be routed through me to the associate commissioners and tree warden as needed. I can't make all the calls right now, and anything that requires some tree work will require our assistance from our tree pruning crew, tree removal crew. If it's that extensive, those won't be handled directly by this committee. And then, yeah, I've kind of talked about all of this stuff. So if you feel like coming down and having a chat in person, I'm in City Hall room 303 as well, and you're welcome to do so during our City Hall hours anytime. So a little bit on the importance of trees. I've got 5 minutes for this, so I'm just going to keep on going here. I found this nice website that I thought would be nice for people to see that sums it up, the challenges of not having a good urban forest, and then the benefits that can come with having a well-managed urban forest. So a lot of us here might know these really well, but it's important to not assume that everyone knows why trees are good, and also that not everyone is going to think trees are good. Some people might come to the tree committee having pretty serious problems with trees, and we'll see some of those later in the presentation. But whether people are in favor of trees or against trees, that doesn't reflect on who they like, how they are as a person, or how we should treat them. So I like to show this slide just to start off with you know, during natural disasters and during increasing development, so much that the air is becoming polluted. There's noise pollution. Folks are having health issues. There's heat islands. As we see some of these things, and we can't forget the wildlife here, as those kind of animals don't have homes, that can be really detrimental economically and just in terms of wanting to live in a city. So here in Lynn, we face all these challenges on the left, and we would like to kind of move towards the right, where we have some help from trees in terms of carbon storage and air pollution control. We really want to have a city that feels nice to live in, and trees are shown to actually have those physical, psychological benefits, and soil benefits in the soil. I think that's not talked about enough. The urban underground can be this sort of utility spaghetti, but we do have living soils, and we have the potential to build those and manage water better, keep us from losing our topsoil through trees. There's plenty of benefits. If you have questions and comments about challenges and benefits of trees, we can definitely have that as part of our discussion later on. And here's a little bit more of a zoomed in, well, how is a tree doing any of this, or how is the urban forest doing any of this? This is from a paper by, I think it's pronounced Doik. And this is a paper that I could send a link to if you're interested. It's from the UK, but it applies everywhere. Trees are big plants that are doing pretty heavy lifting in terms of transpiration and photosynthesis and absorbing particles from the air, uptaking nutrients from the soil and transforming those. And this is a little bit of a picture of how they do that. And then it kind of zooms out to the street level, where it's actually bringing people into the mix, and it's talking about people's comfort and their thermal comfort, the complexity of the urban forest. It's very important to not plant just one species of tree. You need biodiversity for a functioning urban forest. And it does I was going to say conflate. That's not the right word, though. I was going to say conflate, but I mean, it does kind of transcend to energy savings and benefits for people, and kind of an economic benefit actually when we think about how much runoff is being avoided and how much water is being filtered across the whole city as things build up. I wanted to include in the slides that get posted after these meetings the Vibrant Cities Lab website. You could go down any rabbit hole with trees that you might want to through there. And then here's the exciting part. Someone had put in their tree response to the interest form that they wanted to see the urban heat islands in Lynn. The good news is that we know where they are. The bad news is that we have them. So urban heat island effect means that a part of your city is actually many degrees hotter than the comparable surrounding city average temperature. So these areas in the dark red are our EEA hotspots. That's this brown, red, not really sure what color this is. That's the layer on top in this map here. The blue teal outline is the Lynn boundary. So you can see that in the southern portion of the city where we have the most development, it's much hotter than surrounding towns, than the average for Lynn as a whole. The Lynn Woods, by comparison, is not lit up. That's because of all the trees there. It's a lot cooler in that reservation. But most of the people in Lynn are living in these areas that are hot. And so we need to plant some trees to mitigate that. I'm happy to provide this graphic, add more information as we go forward. But really in this section, I just wanted to call people to think about a tree or a forest that is or has been important to you in the past. Picture on the left is a sugar maple that's going to change, about to go through its leaf change over in the eastern burial ground right here in Lynn. That picture was taken today. So that was a tree that I just thought was really beautiful and historic. And then the other picture is from the Henry Ave playground. And I just was thinking, imagine this scene as the sun's going down and it's kind of going into fall. If there weren't any trees here, this would have quite a different feeling. So just think about a tree that's important to you. Now for the really beautiful stuff, the program updates. In Lynn, we have the Greening the Gateway Cities program active. This purple area in the Lynn boundary on the left is their planting zone. So the city of Lynn itself is not the only program that is operational in planting trees in Lynn. This tree in the middle is a sweet gum in the Lynn Common that was planted by DCR in this program, Greening the Gateway Cities. DCR stands for the Department of Conservation and Recreation. If I use that acronym, please, if you don't know what that is, please just let us know. Maybe someone can answer it in the chat if people have that question. And they did a great job resetting and kind of remulching some of these trees, taking care of them. This summer, I was able to go out and help them with that work. The blue dots on the right in the bottom, those are the trees that have been planted by this program since 2014, the mid 2010s, 2014, 2017. I kind of get a little mixed up with when they exactly started, but they are about 85% to their goal for planting in the city of Lynn. They still have under 400, so 366 trees left to plant in this purple area in Lynn to meet the canopy goals and the planting goals of that program. So we're going to be working really closely with them. And it's important to keep this purple outline in mind, as that is the planting zone for them. And if you're in that zone, you can call them directly. They can plant trees on public or private property. So if you want a tree in your backyard, that's who we're going to direct you to, and we can connect you with them as well if you don't have the number. For our city projects, this is what we have going on. So we have a very large grant from the Federal Arbor Day Foundation Inflation Reduction Act that's active for 3 years. That's what lets me come here and make a presentation like this and talk with you all and help support this work. We're also going to be planting 150 trees over those 3 years through that grant, and we will be producing an urban forest plan. Then we're really excited. We had 2 more grants through the state that got awarded recently. These are 1-year grants, and they really are focused on getting things done. So we're going to be preparing 80 new tree pits with the Greening the Gateway Cities program, and many of those are going to be planted as well in partnership. The DCR team will be planting 110 trees as part of that, and our program will be helping water those and take care of those trees, especially with our youth workforce stuff that's going to be happening and forming later. And we have a tree health survey that I'll talk about in a minute that is pretty exciting too. So for the big grant, this yellow area on the right is the area in which I can plant trees on public property. It's mainly going to be in streets, in our hot spots, in our environmental justice areas. And so that's what I'm thinking about right now is where can we plant in these areas and how can we also establish a framework, not just planting trees at this address or this address. It's been shown that if you just take a address by address, tree by tree approach, which is important to do in some capacities. But if you don't do the larger scale planning for your whole city, you might not have the policies and procedures in place to actually sustain the trees for their lifetimes. The second grant is the one with making new tree pits, and these blue dots are where that was scoped out. These locations are probably going to change because we don't have very wide sidewalks or many places to plant trees or many places to cut pits that would be big enough in these areas. We're looking really hard at that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But this grant is really awesome because it's going to boost the capacity of our DPW. It's going to require some high quality tree care into the future, and it's done in partnership with a very experienced team. So we're really looking forward to that one, and that will be happening soon. Our tree health survey is going to be a windshield survey starting really soon. So if you see somebody driving through your neighborhood with their flashers on, or if you see someone driving and stopping at every tree, that could be Jim. It could also be me, but you may see someone coming and looking at the trees in your neighborhood. They're going to be looking at species, location, condition, and priority for management. And I'll just say right here that if you don't know what's out there, and it's very hard to know every tree that's out there in a city after just a couple months, you can't make efficient management decisions about them. Our tree crew in the DPW is doing a tremendous job keeping up with people's requests as they make them, but we can't know about a problem that doesn't get brought to our attention in the city. So, really getting those requests in when you see something wrong with a tree, that helps us out quite a bit. Um, and I think I'm seeing something in the chat. I'm not sure. Okay, I can see it. I'm going to stop and address this right now, if that's okay by everyone. I'm seeing a question from Anais. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Please let me know how to pronounce that if I pronounce it incorrectly. Can we identify wider streets and expand the sidewalk there to add tree pits? Yes, that is what our grant is actually intended to do, but to maintain ADA accessibility in a lot of those places, we do need 4 feet of sidewalk for folks who may be wheelchair users or folks with different abilities to still be able to walk down the sidewalk. So if you think about how wide you would want your tree pit to be, a 3 foot wide tree pit is about what we can fit in most of our sidewalks. It's actually what we have in most of our sidewalks in Lynn, although we do have a bunch of 2.5 by 2.5 foot postage stamp tree pits. We don't want to be planting large shade trees in those. It's not enough space for the roots. But in those locations, we can try to expand the sidewalk. We're going to have some issues with current issues people are facing with parking, current issues people are facing with, the sidewalk already being too narrow to even walk down, potentially sometimes because of a building lot being built right up to the edge of that building. So it's a good thing I'm in the planning department because I have access to a lot of planning related things and planning related people. So we will be looking very heavily at expanding the sidewalks, but also expanding the tree pit and keeping the sidewalk, which requires this whole complicated flexi-pave thing that we can talk about at the end if we want to. So hopefully that answered the question. I'm gonna minimize the chat for now. Hopefully I can get that back if I need it. I might have just moved it to a place I can't. But I'll get into some successes that we've had. I'm gonna go really quick through these. A lot of you probably already know about these and I want to save time for discussion. So Urban Forestry website, we have a website, please check it out. We have a lot of activity on that website and we can check in at how much people are using our website. So if we start really failing with this and no one's using it, we will make changes. We planted the first tree of the big grant. It was an American elm on Liberty Tree Day in August of this year, and I've been watering that tree. It did get a gator bag on it, so we are very excited about that. It looks really great. I'm excited to see. I think we thought maybe 10 people were going to come to this, but we had about 40. So thank you all for that. We also had a great time. I don't think a lot of people knew about this, but we were able to go with our tree crew foreman. That's actually Efris pictured on the right with a Zubat, so a handsaw that he was able to get in the raffle. A lucky person, I think Efris may be, but we're also lucky to have him on our bucket crew in the city of Lynn. And we had some tremendous tree wardens able to teach us in 4 different training sessions at this event. So we were really excited to go to that and keep learning more. We have more to learn every day. Also, Lynn Side Out, we may have seen some of you there. That's an event that Mayor Nicholson has each year to kind of introduce people to different departments. On the left, that's the planning department, which is what I am in. And on the right, we have some folks adding pins to our map of where trees need different things. Obviously us. We are a huge success. Everyone here tonight is a part of that success. So check out our project. You can access this from the main website, but we do have a page where we're posting the videos and the slides from each tree committee meeting. I didn't want to forget that I started going to a different Lynn public school every month, talking about urban forestry and arboriculture. I am a climbing arborist on the side, so I do tell people in the classes about that as a possible career, in addition to my position here in the city of Lynn. And they get quite excited about it. So this has been a really success so far, and it's coordinated by Marissa Angeli in our Innovation and Career Pathways department at Lynn Public Schools. Next week, I will be going to Lynn English, so I'm very excited to do that. Big thing I'm excited about, but probably not everybody's favorite thing, is we've made some maps. We have now an operational tree inventory where anything that gets recorded about a tree can actually be updated in the field. In the back end, we can have new tree requests. We can view those while we're out walking around. We can take pictures of stuff. We can inspect things and attach those inspections to individual trees. And this is going to be something that we really involve once we have youth working for us, and once we have some interns and some community members who are trained in how to use this, we'll eventually be able to have people contributing. I would ask for patience on that. So you can help by sending me an address and a tree that's there, a picture of the tree. I do need the address to be able to add it to these maps. But the main way is that you can send me new tree requests. So if you see an empty tree pit, send me that address and I'll add it right to these maps. The new tree requests we currently have are all of the green stars on the right. And you can see we can overlay the green stars with the different planting zones for the different projects, with trees that have already been planted, and the brown squares, my favorite, that's our site inventory. So we can actually take down measurements of how big is that tree pit? What is in it? Is it soil? Is it bricks? Is it asphalt? All possibilities. I haven't even gotten to the challenges yet, and it's about 6:25. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that I've even spoken with in Lynn. This has been a really warm welcome, and I'm really grateful for you all being here and to learn about what's going on currently and where we can go in the future with this pretty fantastic team. You can see some ward counselors learning DBH measurements. Pretty cool that a horse chestnut tree has a cutout in the sidewalk panel. That means that we're not the first ones to care about this here, but we are the ones to take this forward. So now, it being October, here's some scary stuff. Brace yourselves, because trees are not always perfect. And here's a tree that was behaving badly just several weeks ago, or maybe last week. Trees can fall down if they're not managed. Trees can fall. No one was injured during this, but this was on Broad Street, and it caused quite a lot of damage. So this is just part of the reason why you need some urban foresters. You need some people looking out. You need some tree health survey done, is because we can hopefully assess the condition of our trees and reduce the likelihood that this will happen in the future. We can't eliminate that risk, but we can certainly manage the resource through improved efficiencies and knowing what we have. This is really spooky right here. There's no tree in this pit. That's scary in itself. This tree was not very well sited and then not very well managed in its future. Not calling any shots on anybody, but this is the type of thing that really we want to avoid in the future. And this picture on the right is just a little bit of an example of tree protection. We need to think about tree protection to a greater extent as we go forward. I have another whole slide of scary things, so sorry if anyone is needs to cover their eyes or run out of the room, but we do have instances of trunk protection not being enough. Trees need roots, and they need their roots not to be severed within the drip line. So this is a pear tree as well, not the best tree. And we can talk about that if we need to. But, these are just some things. Here's a friend, Hennessy, who has been really interested in taking photos of trees in Lynn, which is awesome. Looking at some included bark and another pear tree in the Lynn Common. And then our natural areas. This has come up a lot this month. Our natural areas, although deadwood and standing dead trees are really good for wildlife and very good for natural areas. If you looked closely at this picture, you'd also see invasive species and you'd see some fences in disrepair. So it's not just the street trees. There's also natural areas that are part of the urban forest with some fantastic trees providing canopy. And then here's some girdling roots. If that term is not familiar to you, that's when the roots are circling around the base of the tree. It can be very problematic. And this tree pit is very small for this honey locust that is providing a lot of services to our city. This might be too much detail, but we've got some tree requirements that we're trying to meet. So we are trying to fit trees into the city of Lynn. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're, 20 feet away from a building foundation, you're across the street in the next building foundation. So we really want to think about where we can fit trees. If you happen to live in a neighborhood in Lynn and you have very wide sidewalks, please send me a note. I would love to come visit and see just how wide those sidewalks are with my measuring tape. And here's another very nerdy, possibly too detailed example of how much I'm thinking about where we put these trees. We need to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, but we also need to have trees like this 14.5 inch. DBH stands for diameter at breast height. It's a common way to measure the size of a tree. We do need these trees in our streets in larger tree pits than this 4 by 3.5. The other thing to notice about this is that there are overhead wires here. So in the future, we will not be able to plant a honey locust underneath an overhead wire like this, or we will have some spooky, scary outcomes. So we'll be thinking about species selection and siting as we go forward. And here's a little bit more about how we're doing that. We're talking to other communities. So that's very important, is to learn from others and not reinvent the wheel with energy that we don't necessarily need to expend. So we've been really grateful to the city of Everett, Salem, City of Malden, and Northampton. Their tree wardens have all been very helpful in talking through this issue with me. We want to be thinking long term. We don't want to plant a tree and have it live for 2 years. We want that tree to be living for 20 years or something like that, or 100 years if we could get that. So essentially the update is we're going to plant in available sites with the big grant that we have now in that yellow area that I showed earlier, and we'll be working on tree siting throughout the winter. So if you all want to think about that, I'd be happy to hear your ideas. Fall planting plan. The strategy for this was to find sites. So you start with that. I was looking for places where I'm allowed to spend the grant money. So it must be in the zone. I was then looking for who had requested a tree, which is great. We had a lot of requests. And then something that can be a little bit of a discussion point is clustering. So I was looking for requests where not only had one request been made on the street, but there were many empty tree pits. The neighborhood had not been planted for a long time. So I found one street, Locust Street, kind of smack dab in the middle of Lynn, that has, I think, about 30 openings for trees, which is a lot to have on one street. Having your plantings clustered together makes them easier to maintain. You can water them all in a row down the street, and you can plant a bunch of different species. You can also measure those tree pits all in one trip. And then pit readiness. So if the pit has a stump in it, we have to have someone come out and grind that stump, which means we need to spend more money. It takes more time, and the pit isn't ready for a tree yet. Next step is dig safe. We did order 30 trees today, so get ready to be planting and see pictures of us planting, and to get a bunch of hydrogel slurry all over our hands, because we are planting bare root trees. That is because those trees are dug out of the ground where they're grown in a nursery, and they retain their feeder roots, so the roots aren't cut. The bare root trees are also a lot easier to move around, which saves us on terms of equipment, and it allows additional people to be involved and to help plant these trees. Really, this is the establishment rate of these. It can be hit or miss depending what species and depending on the trucking, different aspects, but we're fairly confident in the nursery we're ordering from, and we will be planting those in High Rock Park as some replacements for some dead trees. Aspen Street, Locust Street, the Blossom Street extension, which has some empty pits. And if folks have some really strong new tree requests, please talk to me while we have these trees. There might be something we can do within the zone. And I'd like to just thank the DPW. They're going to be helping me out with a delivery location for those trees and with planting the trees. So I'm excited to see Efris out there, and also other members of the DPW who are going to be endeavoring on this first planting season of our grant with me. And that is through the slides. So I think I did it. I might have gone a little bit quickly. Sorry for that. But I think a lot of information packed in a short time. I did want to let people know that I'm going to take notes in the presentation. So I'm not going to record names or anything, although the recording probably it will have your names and stuff. But I'm going to take notes in here so that when people are viewing the slides, they can actually see the results of our discussion. And I'm going to stop sharing right now so you can all see me again. And I'm going to look at the chat to see if that was another question. And yes, I'm seeing Sam, thank you. What about education on invasive plants that impact tree health? I've seen some very large pines covered in bittersweet. Well, it looks like we have an arborist on the line, because I'm loving the tree identification. That's pretty sweet. Pines are pretty important to our to have some evergreen trees around in the winter. They're also really beautiful, and anything covered in bittersweet is not going to have a good time. Oriental bittersweet Celastris orbiculatus is a vine that uses torsion to actually climb up a tree, and it strangles the tree with some pretty horrible results. Invasive plants are you can specialize in that. You can get a PhD in that. I actually was out there cutting some knotweed behind the Henry Avenue playground the other day. So Japanese knotweed, Oriental bittersweet, multiflora rose, ailanthus or tree of heaven, which is actually a tree. These are invasive plants. And what that means is that they actually have incredible capacity to reproduce, cause harm to the environment, or cause economic harm. And yeah, they're not easy to kill. So bittersweet, you can usually go out and you can actually cut a window in the vine. So find the large vine and make sure you have bittersweet. Make sure it's not poison ivy. And you can cut a section out of that vine, and that will help the tree. When you have a tree covered in bittersweet, you do not want to pull the vine out of the tree, because you will damage branches of the tree in doing that. So just make a window cut where you can reach, and then let the vine die on the tree. There is no natural areas program here in Lynn at this time. I think this group is a way for people to express that they're interested in invasive plant education. And I think the Floating Bridge Pond cleanup, they were doing a lot of invasive plant cutting back, but we do need to increase our capacity to address invasive species. Not even just plants, also the bugs that we have out there. We've got some invasive pests like the spotted lanternfly we do have in Lynn. So please keep an eye out, and I'll send some links, put some links in the presentation in the notes section. just to the invasive species information that we have access to. Thank you for that comment. I do see another comment in here that I'll address, and then I'll open it up for people to raise their hands on Zoom or unmute. And this question says, or comment says, I've seen that some sidewalks have been expanded at the corners to reduce speeding at turns. Can we leverage that design to add pits on or near sidewalk corners that also add pedestrian protection? I think that's a great idea. I think that the main challenges with changing the streets tend to be the underground utilities, whether they're under the sidewalk or under the middle of the street, and then also making sure there's visibility. So we've had some issues in Lynn with, there was actually a spruce tree on the bend of, I think it's Euclid Avenue, that was actually it's a very high speed curve and you couldn't see around the corner because there was a spruce tree in the street. It goes to speak to our species selection being very important. And I am going to show a slide about that as well, where we had some good intentions, but we had a little bit of rogue planting of silver maple underneath some power lines in the street. That's going to be a long-term very challenging for us to manage. So just in answer to that question, I think we can definitely look into the design phases of these kind of traffic projects. I'm situated in a great department to have that discussion with our planners. We also need to talk to engineering about that and just make sure that it's safe. Trees are shown to reduce traffic speeds, so trees can help with pedestrian protection and traffic calming. So that's a good thing to bring up. Thank you. I see one more in here in the chat. So before we open it up to speaking, I noticed some trees have been removed along Market Street, which I think supports the Northern Strand Trail extension. Do you know if that project will have locations where new trees can be planted or any plans to restore trees and shrubs? Yes, that project, I have all of the removal data in my GIS, my geographic information system. So I actually know all about which trees were removed for that project, and I will be very much advocating for all the new trees that get planted in there to be added to our tree inventory and to receive a pretty high level of care. Anything that has to do with state projects can take a lot of coordination. I was able to get the arborist report, which was helpful. They actually went out and looked and they actually did pre-construction pruning and they did a good job. If folks are interested in that, I did look at the cuts that were made during that. There was only one thing I was confused about, and that was it's potentially a different project, but trunk armor on ash trees. I think in future projects, we should be having our ash trees removed. Ash trees are susceptible to a pest that does not necessarily have a cure once it has affected a tree. It's the emerald ash borer. I actually have this, which I'm not sure if you can see. This is an actual pin that I carry around on my little lanyard. You'll have to come see me to see it in person. This is an actual size of an adult emerald ash borer. It gets under the bark and it kind of makes these trails through the tree's circulatory system, and it does kill the tree. You'll see ash trees, which were a common street tree. We do have a bunch of ash street trees in Lynn. They have dead tops right now. We do have emerald ash borer that has gotten to the visible point of affecting most of our trees. Our tree health management survey should identify those. So just in terms of trees that are being protected, which is a good thing, I would advocate for their roots to be protected and also not to save the ash trees. If we do find some ash that have not been affected by that pest to an extreme extent, we can inventory those and we could get them on a injection program in the future. Right now, we're not at the stage where we can do that. We don't have enough capacity. So short answer, which I owe you, is yes, there will be new trees and shrubs planted. I do think that it would be a good idea to get those in our inventory if we can and try to monitor how those do. If they need any help with watering, we may be able to do that with our youth program next summer, if they're planted by then. I am tracking that project, but I don't know every detail. Thank you for the question. Now I think anybody who wants to speak, if you want to if you can raise your hand, there's a raise your hand function in Zoom, or you can unmute. Just if two people talk at the same time, we'll figure out who would like to go first. Yes, go ahead, Anais. Can you give us a pronunciation of your name?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is Anais.
Anais, thank you so much.
Yeah, we met briefly at Lynn Side Out. I have quite a few ideas, but I actually wrote one in the chat just now. I'm I have a there's an elderly housing project in Ward 3 that is, I believe, like across the street from the park, and I've noticed that it has a lot of unused parking, like 99 well, I would say 100% of the time that I've seen it. um and I've also talked to some of the people in zoning planning, and there are a lot of requirements around how much parking per unit or per like the size of a project, which doesn't always make sense. Particularly, we have a few projects currently in the works for elderly housing, for example, and it just doesn't always make sense to have large parking. You essentially build a giant hot plate in the middle of the city that doesn't even end up getting used. And so I'm wondering if we can revisit some of the requirements around that, and maybe as a shorter term solution, repurpose parking structure or parking lots that have been identified to be unused or largely unused, and then kind of add tree pits to that. Maybe anything from like a few trees at a time just to test it out. But really, I'm trying to kind of actually reuse that space because it's just not used, but it's adding to the heat island effect.
Thank you so much, Anais. Yes, if you could email me some of these comments as well, that would be helpful. And I definitely can
Yep.
say that that is an interdepartmental question that I can't answer fully on my own here today, but I can say that as part of our urban forest planning process and our planting planning, it would be really helpful to have your feedback as we go forward. And I see that Sam is responding in the chat, and I'll just read this for the sake of the recording and people who are watching, is that TDMs, traffic demand management, are the way to approach that. It has a tax impact, but is a popular way to work with developers. So a lot of concepts, just for other folks on the call or who may be listening, you know, a lot of concepts are coming up here, and it's how do you fit multiple uses of a city in? How do you fit trees in with other needs? How do you fit in kind of the uses of an area with the needs that are felt in that neighborhood versus the requirements that can come from state, federal, local laws? These are all really good questions and comments, and I'm glad that these are being brought up. It's certainly these are things that we can work on as we move forward each planting season. Hopefully we will be able to add trees in more and more creative locations. So yes, keep asking the question. Let us know if there are particular cases like addresses where this applies. Send those in. You can email me those, and I can have some discussions in City Hall about what the next steps would be to continue that discussion. Thank you.
Actually, quick question regarding the tree pits. I know you mentioned that some of these sidewalks are very small, and I'm actually on a street that has tiny sidewalks. Excuse me. Is there an option to essentially have a tree pit kind of like in the middle where it's partly on the public sidewalk, partly on private property?
Wow, that's a really cool question. I have not heard of a half public, half private, although I've seen some trees that meet that description and they usually get quite confusing as to what should happen with those trees. But yes, there is a way, and this is kind of through the state law, Chapter 87, that describes what a public shade tree actually is and who's responsible for it. There is a way to do something called a setback planting. If you have a front yard, that allows the city tree warden to come in and help plant a tree within 20 feet of the it's called the setback.
Hmm.
And we don't have capacity to fill our tree pits right now, so we don't have a front yard tree program. But keep asking, and if you do have a front yard or some type of area like that, if the building that on your lot is not right up to the sidewalk, it is worth discussing. Arborist nerd note here, there are some certain types of trees that are fastigiate. They grow upright. They've been kind of bred to have this structure where they fit in a really small space, like right up against a building. I don't love those for creating spreading tree canopy like what we
Yeah.
really want, but anywhere we can put a tree, an arborist is going to get excited about that. So it does depend on the space available as well.
Actually, funny enough, we have those taller trees in front of Thurgood Marshall, but doesn't make sense because we wanted the more shady option there.
Yeah, and it does depend on how much room there was, because for a large canopy tree, you plant it at a 2 inch diameter, 2 inch caliper, really. And people think it's not much of anything, but some of those trees get to be 70 feet in height and 50, 60 feet in spread. And if we don't have enough capacity or enough arborists around to actually prune those and keep those in good shape, then we end up doing kind of more harm than good. So I don't actually know that the location that you just mentioned by heart yet. I do plan to know every tree in Lynn at some point. It might take me at least a year or two to do that. But yeah, sometimes we don't always get the tree we want in the right space. And what we're doing here with the tree committee and with my position is we're really trying to do this concept called right tree, right place.
Hmm.
Sometimes if you plant a canopy tree in too small of a pit, you get that girdling that eventually causes the death and necessarily removal of the tree that I showed in one of my spooky, scary slides. So yeah, I'm not saying that applies to your situation, but we are trying to site the right trees to the right place. It can be quite challenging because we have salt compaction. Compaction is when the soil doesn't have any pore space in it. So it's almost like water and air can't get through to the roots, and the trees need that. So we have salt, soil compaction, we've got air pollution. Some trees don't respond well to that. We've got flooding. Flooding is a tough one for Lynn. We are in the flood zone. That's why we don't have London plane trees that are historic. The large London plains, if they get flooded with salt water, they are not going to enjoy that. Sometimes the native sycamore can do a little better, but we don't have London plains because of that. So yeah, there's a sort of answer. But thank you, Anais. It seems like you really are knowledgeable about some of this stuff, and I really look forward to hearing from you in this group and maybe in my email inbox if you've got some addresses for me.
Yep, I'll send them over.
I do see Susan, I see your hand. Do you want to go ahead and unmute? There you go.
I just had a question because there's an area on Lafayette Park, and I'm sure it's not the only one, where the sidewalk is really lifting up because of roots of trees. And is that a part of this survey too, in terms of where there may be a need for dealing with that? So it's not a safety hazard because it's up, it's up like this, but it still leaves room for the roots.
Yes, great question and comment. So the windshield survey, the inventory itself that we have that contract for, that'll be a windshield survey. That's mainly designed to look for the worst of the worst. It's going to really help us identify standing dead trees that have potential to fall on cars, like that scary picture that I showed from Broad Street. In terms of sidewalk heave, I am including that as a field in my inventory. That normally happens with some of our older trees where we've put concrete blocks on top of the roots of either an existing tree or the tree has just grown so much. And, species can have a lot to do with that. I am recording that as I go out and also as I hear about it from people. So at specific addresses, if you have a specific address where the sidewalk is heaved, I can't guarantee we'll fix it right away. Also at the stage of our program, I can't guarantee that the fix that gets done in the short term doesn't harm the tree because we don't have a tree protection ordinance. I'm seeing a question in the chat, how do you fix it? That is a very good question because in Lynn right now, I have seen some places where the DPW has been able to kind of regrade the sidewalk area with some asphalt and sort of make a temporary like sort of patching type of fix to the sidewalk. We actually have someone on the call who might be able to talk about this. So Chris, I might ask you to talk about what this is like in Malden after I finish answering this question. But right now in Lynn, our options are to remove the sidewalk panel and destroy the roots of the tree to set a new panel at grade, which has potential to cause structural failure of the tree and health problems if it doesn't cause the structural failure. So existing large trees, which are most important to protect for our canopy and for our climate change goals, those are sometimes the trees responsible for our immediate tripping hazards. And so we're at a very interesting point to talk about. We do need people to tell us what they think should be done. To a greater extent, if they know. We'd love to hear from you of where you're experiencing these hazards and what you'd like to see done about it. I would like to see personally, not representing the city of Lynn, but personally, I would like to see concrete sidewalk panels removed and flexi pave. So a substance that looks like asphalt and reads like asphalt, but it's a pervious surface that lets water in. It essentially expands the tree pit. I'd like to see that done for our older trees. Some root care is really what I'd like to see. But right now, sometimes roots are being cut and sidewalk is being relayed. Sometimes the tree is being removed entirely because of this as well in some situations. So we got to keep the discussion going on this one, Susan, but it is very important for people to be able to walk down the sidewalk or roll down the sidewalk if they're using a wheelchair or another mobility assisting device. So we want to map those sidewalk heaves and I think right now we want to try to patch them rather than pull up the concrete until we get some more funding for FlexiPave. Chris, do you have any thoughts on this from Malden?
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Chris, I'm the tree warden and superintendent of cemeteries here in Malden. So we come across this quite a bit, and the main reason that this happens is, like Erica said, the pits are too small or they're planted too deep originally. So the roots need to find oxygen and water, so they tend to rise up and heave the panels a lot more than if the tree was planted correctly. So the higher you plant and exposing the root flare, the less of this root problem you have. But we do come across it on just about every street here in Malden. So what we do is I have my DPW or water crews go out and we gently peel the concrete from the back of the tree where the roots are. Sometimes we find that it's just a matter of there's a lot of dense grade, which is the stone they use under the concrete sidewalks. So there's a lot of dense grade between the root and the concrete panel. So sometimes we find that by removing that excess dense grade, we could actually get a concrete panel back in place without harming the roots of the tree. If the root is elevated, we cut the panels out from behind the tree and we use what Eric has mentioned a million times is FlexiPave. We're pretty proficient at it. We don't like to use asphalt because that root is going to keep expanding and growing over time. And flexi pave is much easier to remove and make a repair than ripping up asphalt and risking damaging those roots again. So flexi pave is definitely the way to go for that and for getting ADA access where you normally wouldn't have room for a tree pit.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I just wanted to mention to the folks who are on the call that on Friday last week, I was able to visit the city of Salem and talk with their director of the Department of Public Services. His name is Ray, and he showed me some of their tree pits where they have been removing the concrete panel, the full concrete panel, sometimes two, around existing trees. And they've been replacing that whole section of the sidewalk with FlexiPave. I'm going to maybe see if I can pull up a picture of this tree that they did this for, because it was very tremendous for me to see. It gave me a lot of hope that we can actually do this in Lynn at some point, because it still reads like a sidewalk and it's still fully usable as a sidewalk. But they have done some tree preservation. And I don't have a picture of the one tree that I wanted, but I do have this picture here, which will be interesting to show because it's an ash tree. And it kind of goes, so this is a tree that's way too close, and I think people can see this, yes? Anybody not? Chris, could you nod? It's showing you if you can see this. Okay, so this is an ash tree that's actually in really good condition, and they actually they had a sidewalk heave here, and they pulled this whole section of concrete paneling, and they put FlexiPave, which kind of looks like asphalt but is not. It's actually pervious, so the water can go right through. If you pour a gallon of water on this stuff, Chris is actually the one who showed me this. It goes right through, and this was an existing tree before they did that, where they did not cut the roots or damage it, and the tree is still healthy, even with emerald ash borer around, even with changes to the sidewalk and the road, and even with the fence and activity being concentrated right over that tree's roots. So thanks to Ray from Salem, because that was pretty cool. And that's a goal to try to get towards. I want to mention for the folks in the chat or watching, but not able to see the chat, is that someone said they would, Anais again said they'd appreciate a book recommendation about urban forest planning to better understand right tree, right place. There are a lot. I will recommend Chris's book. Sorry to be such a fan of Chris Rosa in Malden, but he did publish a book called the Malden Tree Planting Guidelines or something of that nature that we can send a link out for in the PowerPoint. He could put it in the chat potentially. It is something that's been created by some very experienced people, and it will help you. There's also Planting for Resilience by Ashley McElhenney. It came out in 2019, and it goes into each species and what their preferences are. So if you're more on the species side, you might like that. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to zoom through these more chats, and then definitely feel free to raise your hand now and keep it raised, and I'll call on you and I'll stay as long as we want. But Sam said, would love to work together as a committee to think about how we can present to City Council and maybe address some of the issues that impact or support the urban canopy, or even push for a climate action plan. And that has 5 heart reacts on it. So I would say that's a pretty popular thing to do. And we'll definitely write that down as something that the committee, which is just a group, whoever has capacity to come should come and help us do this. The City Council has been really in favor of a lot of stuff that we've been doing in terms of urban forestry, because I think every city councilor wants their ward to have a better quality of life. And in Lynn, almost every single person is appearing to recognize that trees help with that. So I'm excited to be an urban forester in the city of Lynn because of that exactly. I'd like to mention that Tim Desmond said, would it be possible to add an option to the See-Click Fix Lynn to flag trees in distress? That's a great idea. See-Click Fix right now is a new option in Lynn. It's something the DPW is ramping up now. They're just starting. There's something like 300 to 400 issues in there. It's not in the thousands like other cities like Malden have. So See-Click Fix is a good place to do some tree management stuff. We discussed the potential option of having the new tree requests be done through See-Click Fix. One of the issues, or one of the cons to doing it through that method, would be that See-Click Fix requires like immediate action and response. And some of this tree stuff is going to take time. Something that I actually say quite a lot, and that can be controversial for people who do love trees and want to move fast, is that we really need to like empathize with the trees and move at the speed of trees. You'll hear move at the speed of trust quite a lot. Trees are supposed to live for 100 years, some up to 300 years. I think we can take some time to plan thoughtfully, because in the past in urban forestry as a field itself, there's been decisions made like let's plant full streets of Norway maple. We've got that in Lynn and we see the effects of that now. We really don't want to be doing that. So if we move with too much haste, we're going to make bad decisions. So I don't think that putting things in C-click fix for immediate resolution would be a good way to handle our tree stress. One of the reasons I really am thinking about a lot is that we only have one tree crew. That person that I showed in the slides, Efris, that is our tree foreman. That is our only experienced tree pruner in the city. So we really need to think about how much of a burden that is to actually even be reacting to the immediate, like when we have a storm, how much work that individual has to do. And I'm not saying that, it's not enough and they should work harder, because they work very hard. I'm saying that we may need additional staff. We may need additional support in our tree care programming. I certainly can't get out there and peel back concrete carefully for every tree in the city. And so we may need additional staff in the future, and that's going to take some doing. That'll take some time to get those people on, to get everybody invested in, like, don't just show up at the tree and solve the problem in the first way that comes to mind, like really think about what would be best for that individual tree. And then thank you, Chris. Chris did put the City of Malden tree guidelines as a PDF in the chat. That has some great things about tree protection. It has some great things about planting. It's a really good read. I think, I would say we should have a City of Lynn tree guidelines. I think it would just be a copy and paste of Chris's hard work. So we'll keep that in mind as we make our urban forest plan, and it's certainly some good weekend reading for y'all. And it is 7:02, so just a time check for anyone that might have to leave. This has been a great meeting, a lot of great ideas here. Personally, I would like to say that I am a bit worried that we are kind of at this really high level of arboriculture in this discussion. It may not be the level that we need to be discussing trees to get additional points of view on board. So just as we go forward, we're going to want to be translating. We're going to be wanting to have Spanish interpretation available at some point in Lynn. I learned today that in Lynn, in our public schools, the languages spoken, it's 53% Spanish and 38% English. So we really, we want to make sure we get some more voices at the table. And in the future of the Lynn Tree Committee, we may be having discussions that kind of are less high level than this, but I do really appreciate and love to nerd out about the specifics of arboriculture and urban forestry. And we will continue to make room for that too. Any more questions or thoughts from anyone who hasn't been able to express anything to us yet this meeting?
If I could just say something, and I'm going to embarrass you a little bit.
Oh boy.
You guys are lucky to have Erica in Lynn. If you didn't take her in Lynn, I was going to take her here in Malden. So take advantage of all her knowledge and hard work she's going to put in, because you guys are really lucky to have her. Is that good enough?
Thank you so much, Chris. That is perfect. Now I owe you some help planting a tree or two, don't I?
I thought it was $20 if I said something nice about it. No, she really is great, and she works with me here in Malden, and I'm excited to come to Lynn at some point and help the DPW with the flexi pave aspect, and help Erica maybe site some tree pits. She's helped me with plantings. We're at the Mass Tree Warden and Foresters together, so it's a pleasure to come here and help you guys with whatever you need. And you could steal that book; it's all yours.
Thank you for the permitted theft, Chris. We really appreciate you, and yeah, we're looking forward to working with you here in Lynn too, because we are similar North Shore cities, and we need to stick together and really treat the whole region. It's really an urban forest. It's a forest of our whole region. I think that gets missed sometimes. So, thank you so much, and we'll see you super soon here. I heard Chris planted a microforest, a mini forest today. If anyone here is
Pocket
a
forest.
pocket forest. You know,
First,
lots of terms.
first one in Malden and first one with DCR implementation funds. So the
Awesome.
state's making a pretty big deal about it.
So Anais, some of those unused, if there are unused parking lots, a depaving project and a mini forest could be something in Lynn's future within the next 3 years. I would say that would be towards the later end, just because we need to do some more work to get everybody at the table involved and find that site. Finding the site is the hardest part of that project. So maybe
That's so great. I'll look into pocket forest. That sounds great.
You'll love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the easiest thing I did, just to give you a heads up, is I went to my city's IT department and our GIS department. And city assessors, tax assessors have codes. So they have a code on city-owned unused parcels. Have them type in that code and print you out a map. I had 180 locations. I'm sure Lynn has just as many.
Definitely. All good ideas. Thank you all so much for coming, and definitely keep in touch with the website. You know, stay updated there, because we probably will be talking about our tree planting in the next 3 weeks. I think there'll be some pictures up there that y'all might like to see. I'll send them out to the tree committee as well. But again, thank you and have a great evening. We appreciate the time, and feel free to send anything to my email that you may want to, just a thought, whatever, an address, and I'd be happy to talk to you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Enjoy those fall leaves.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.